Cool. All right, guys. Thank you very much for joining. This is the intro to DAOs event as part of our overriding BitDAO series. We'll get going in a minute or so, and then we'll get into all things DAOs. I'm going to try and be fairly not interactive, but show you lots of stuff along the way that's of interest. Hopefully that should be a nice thing. If you have any questions, do put them in chat, and we'll get to them throughout the session. I'm Anthony, I'm the CEO of Encode, and here to answer everything and give you a nice event today. This will go up on YouTube in the morning if you do miss anything and want to hear it back alongside my slides. Right-o, no time like the present. Let's get it going. Share my screen. Going to do right-ho. Good. Then we're set up there. Let me make sure I've got chat et al. Participants there. Right. Thank you everyone for joining what is this second educational event in the Encode Club BitDAO series. This is our intro to DAOs event and is part of an 18-month program to educate you basically in collaboration with BitDAO. BitDAO itself is one of the world's largest DAOs, basically trying to invest in cool stuff and open finance and building up a broader decentralized ecosystem. We're very grateful to them for partnering with us for this program and all the events that are involved. And it's a lot of events. We've got coding boot camps, we've got hackathons, we've got accelerators, we've got educational events ongoing. It's a really good program. And this is but a small part of a bigger thing happening. Awesome. Keep adding people in. Today, we're going to not talk about what's in the program. We're going to talk about DAOs specifically. And I'm going to kind of, this is, as any of you have done an Encode DAO, maybe one day, George. Any of you that have kind of done an Encode, see me talk, I'm going to talk a lot with some visual cues, and show you stuff. And if you have any questions, I'll happily go down into stuff. Well, let's start with the main question. What is a DAO? Well, in simple terms, everything here revolves around community. And if you take one thing away from this this whole talk, is that community is everything with respect to DAOs, and in crypto in general, but specifically to DAOs. And it's a completely different approach to community building and community management, etc. But fundamentally, a DAO is a decentralized autonomous organization. And like with many things in crypto, we kind of have a naming issue. The things were named for functional reasons, a bit like NFTs. Like NFTs, acronyms are very nice, but non-fungible token is not nice. And in the same way, decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs, and it said DAOs, not DAOs, is a bit of a mouthful. And we're going to break down, this was when I was at uni, this is the one thing they told me always to do, define everything. It's the only thing that's ever served me well, and I'm going to do so now. So let's define the words. So decentralized. So this is probably the most important thing here, besides anything else, is we're trying to do something in a structure based on the principles of decentralization rather than any specific definition. And broadly what we mean here is that no one has central control, obviously that's in the name, and that there is a structure in which ownership and engagement and involvement is shared widely, with all the hallmarks of things like permissionlessness, censorship resistance, and general openness. And this is a completely different approach to, I'm going to say, building in general, building stuff with a centralized mindset. We often think in terms of the way organizations in the world right now are set up, that they have to be centralized to be efficient. You need someone who's in charge, someone who owns the majority, someone who runs something in order to have efficient decision making, efficient processes. Crypto's kind of changed that, and we do this with incentives, and we'll talk about that a bit later. But this thing is, it's decentralized. We're trying to do things whilst not relying on a central force. And it's autonomous, which basically means, again, this kind of is linked to decentralizedness. I think it basically does the same as what trustless means, in that this entity should run without needing any one actor involved in order to make it run. In the sense, it is autonomous. And It doesn't mean autonomous in that it will run itself without anyone being involved, because I don't think that is true. It means you don't need to rely on any one majority, even minority or individual to run it. But I think autonomous is probably the most misleading part, because if I think autonomous in terms of like a car or a machine, I think it can live. It's an organism that can organize itself, and no, DAOs aren't like that. And it's an organization, and this I think is the word that, if autonomous is the least important word and decentralization is the first, organization is the second, to be honest, arguably the most important. We're trying to do a different form of like company or thing or entity that is not currently defined as defines itself very differently to how organizations have come before, and this is a big change. And we'll talk about what this means, and we'll use BitDAO as such an example, and we'll also talk about other DAOs as well, to kind of give you a look. But let's actually have a look at some DAOs. So obviously you have BitDAO, and BitDAO's broad purpose is to invest in stuff, build the future of finance. It has a good vision in that respect. You can go to the docs. You can see that it wants to build this decentralized economy, and has money to do so, has its token. It's managed by its token holders. You get things like Friends with Benefits, which is like a cultural DAO, whatever that means, with a funky website where it's exclusive to get in. And yeah, it's about like empowering artists and operators, and it kind of feels more like a social club than anything else. You get things like Meta Cartel, which is like kind of people building stuff together, and like to some extent you've got also Meta Cartel Ventures that invests in stuff. But this kind of looks like a community in general. You've got things like Constitution DAO, that like Constitution DAO is it was an initiative to buy a copy of the Constitution that was on sale at the auction house Sotheby's. Got things like Free Ross DAO, which is like trying to raise money in order to fight against injustices in the American justice system. You've got things like ARV-DAO, which like manages how the ARV token for the protocol is used. Like there's a broad mix here of what's going on, and we need to kind of unpack that. But broadly, we need to start with what the purpose of a DAO is, and there's many purposes you can have, and each of the different entities I've just mentioned above kind of has different purposes. Like BitDAO is supporting a very broad ecosystem. Friends with Benefits is kind of building a kind of like a social club community. Like Meta Cartel is supporting people building stuff. Constitution DAO is to buy something and look at like a physical item and look after it. Free Ross DAO is kind of like, it's like a pressure group. What is the purpose of the DAO side? Very cool. And then you've got like ARV, which is like managing the money for the purpose of this ecosystem. So there's many different things here. And yeah, again, broadly, it's about managing or organizing something. No, a DEX and a DAO are definitely not the same. A DEX is a decentralized exchange, something like Uniswap, which is basically rather than trading against the house or like a bank or something, I trade against, I trade peer-to-peer effectively with other people. But no, DAO just means it describes a set of all decentralized organizations effectively. And like an obvious way here is just like to manage funds. Like you have these things called smart contracts that you should know about. A smart contract is code that self-executes based on certain conditions. That means that allows for the movement of tokens or money on a blockchain. And an obvious simple use case here is like DAOs like manage money. Like you have various individuals who have access to a certain smart contract and some voting system, and you decide completely on chain how to move money. This is one such version here, and this is kind of closer to the ARV DAO, how to use the ARV token and broadly how to promote the ecosystem, and to a lesser extent, BitDAO. Or it could just be a collection of like-minded people, like without any of that stuff. Like that's like Friends with Benefits. A good example here is, actually I'll come on to that example later. Or it could just be a collection of like-minded people. By the way, it could be both of the first two things. Okay, so this, like, if the first one looks like an investment fund, like the second one kind of looks like, I don't know, a club, a society. It could be a company. Like its purpose can be to like Now, we have to be very careful here. So when I say, oh, I don't know why it always does that. Sorry. In crypto, companies are a bit different because companies have kind of centralized ownership, majority ownership usually, whereas protocols are far bigger and they're owned by their users. So typically you won't see a company be a DAO, you'll see a crypto company be a DAO, which is a protocol. And a protocol is so big and involves so many parties in order to work that you need it to have a different structure to reflect the amount of actors involved. But how does a DAO like actually work? Like it's all this, like what is happening beneath the scenes? What are the frameworks? Like how does Constitution DAO work? How does like BitDAO work? How does Metacartel work? How does Arv work? And so I'm going to talk in general terms. Every protocol, every DAO has its own specifics, but let's talk in general terms. We also want to answer like, what is the blockchain part here? Can you have a DAO without a blockchain? I think broadly you could. Like there's nothing in the name, like decentralized autonomous organization. Maybe autonomous if you define it as it's literally a smart contract, but like, I don't know, that feels quite limited. The blockchain part here broadly is either using blockchain as on-chain governance, like do you keep votes on chain, or we kind of mean the money itself is tokenized, or the token we're using to kind of, or we're trying to govern to kind of vote the movement on is a token, like this money is a token, so we need a smart contract. There's kind of various things here. Or it's that we're dealing with crypto protocols, and therefore, even though the DAO bit is not related to a blockchain, it's dealing with what it is doing is it's managing a company that is itself a protocol itself in crypto. So that's that part of things. But broadly, ultimately, we come down to DAOs being about governance. So if you have a purpose or a collection of individuals, whatever it may be, we're basically assuming, okay, everyone has a collective interest in this thing. No one has a big interest in this thing. And how are we going to now govern this fact? And you get into real socio-philosophical, many thingies, political kind of thoughts here about like, how do I run, is this direct democracy where everyone has a say? Is this representational democracy? Is this even, well, you assume it's kind of a democracy, everyone has a fair kind of vote, a fair share, fair involvement. But like, how do we govern this? And like, how do we manage resources? Like, what is the actual process of doing so? And this is in general a system, like, which is not related to anything on a blockchain, but it's also kind of like, how do I literally do this? How are we literally gonna, let's say BitDAO wanna fund a university talent program, a university kind of research program. How would I literally do that? And it's also kind of about identity here, that with crypto, we make this shift from our identities as us, as people that you can interact with and trust, to a trustless, like digital identity that's represented by a wallet, but nonetheless is an identity and clearly identifiable. It's linked to a digital representation and track record. So this kind of has to be considered as well. And obviously, I've mentioned before, blockchain is changing ownership. When you have something much bigger by design, you cannot assume that one person will run it and own it completely. And in general, that kind of a freedom of the economy, not freedom of the commons, opportunity of the commons type. If anyone's ever read this is me getting economical, the Ellen Ostrom, Governing the Commons and Tragedy of the Commons and Opportunity of the Commons. How do we benefit? Can we build something bigger if we make our scope larger and include lots of people and seed kind of centralized control? And DAOs are going to do that. They're trying to solve bigger problems or different problems than just like, how do I run a company? How does it actually work though? So you always start with a name. So let's say moving funds. You need to build a community. Because the community itself is going to be the thing that runs a DAO fundamentally, we kind of need to make sure that community is bought in and B, is able to govern itself regardless of the mechanisms we use, or there is some uniting purpose. An obvious way is if you have a token, but it can just be like with Constitution DAO, people think it's really cool to buy a DAO, or with Ross DAO, people really think it's cool to kind of fix prison reform. This has to, I think, be there first and foremost. We take the example of BitDAO. There wasn't really a necessary community there. It starts out with an aim, and an aim is also fine. That's what we just said before. And a community then builds around that aim. But I think these two things, having an aim and building a community, and obviously this, I think, starts in quite a centralized manner, and very quickly, by nature of being an idea that involves lots of people, has to involve lots of people, and itself becomes decentralized. You need a system for managing this community. This is the fundamental thing we're kind of getting at here. And you need some forum to discuss. And this is usually Discord, like right now, not for the bigger DAOs where it's like impossible, there's too many voices, you need some abstractions, but you do need a forum to discuss. And currently in crypto, and we'll talk about innovation later, a lot of these innovations are like very primitive. So if I look at like float protocols, it's from, oh my God, it's down. No, don't do that to me. Oh, yeah, this is like very primitive. Like the forum for discussing stuff is like, this looks like tech from the 1990s. Or use something like Discord. And let me just switch sharing my screen now. So something I am part of, but actually it's just good friends run it, or are starting it, is something called, this is just a DAO called 21M. But like, it's a Discord group. It's like, start here, like say hi, like here's the updates, here's what we're doing, like here's us together doing stuff. This is a DAO that might become something, but it's fundamentally organized on Discord. And if you look a lot of DAOs, they start on Discord fundamentally, because the structure for organizing it in this respect, oh, that's messed up, let me go back, it doesn't really matter so much as if you have a purpose and you have a community. And we'll talk about like when it does matter in a moment. But you need a voting system. This is it. And you actually, I think before that, and I haven't put this in here, you need to decide on your democratic structure. If you're going to run a DAO, and again, we've just said that there's lots of different DAOs you could do. How the hell are you actually going to run this? And honestly, I think this is the most neglected area of DAOs and governance. As I don't mean specifically like what protocol you use, like how are we going to do this? Like logistically, like, okay, you have lots of people involved who might or might not want to have a say. How do we add representation on top of this? How do we add systems that for efficient governance? And I haven't really seen them. I think at the moment, the solution broadly is there isn't that much engagement. And so certain loud parties can kind of, either because people trust them because they're loud, or because they are just the only ones that are loud, people kind of, this kind of works. And I don't know if that will work in the long run, especially as protocols get bigger and people get like more engaged. But you do need a voting system. At the moment, we have this effectively like direct democracy thing. Direct democracy means everyone is involved, but everyone has a chance to vote on stuff on something called Snapshot. How Snapshot works is, by the way, usually, so your identity on the DAO is your crypto identity, your wallet. You like sign in with a wallet and a certain address, and you can sign things with your wallet, with your address, without doing a transaction. So it's basically free. And what you do is, you relative to how many tokens you have, you get a number of votes, and you sign you sign the one you want to do. And this works, but like it's encouraging everyone to vote, and also there's nothing that forces that compels the result of a particular vote. This still has to then be executed via a process, which presumably someone has to run. So if you want to play, so Vanessa's put some links in if you want to play around with Snapshot. People please improve on Snapshot. It can be massively improved. You've got Tally as well, which does much the same. It can't compel any kind of votes. It can't compel the results of a vote, but it is for managing expressions of vote as a voting system. You also need this thing called Gnosis Safe, and what Gnosis Safe does is it's responsible for moving funds. It's basically a smart contract where you have multiple people that need to agree to a transaction taking place for it to then take place. And they do this by signing transactions. Yeah, I don't know what this is. This is some random one I've kind of gone on to. But if I wanted to do, let's see if it's done the transactions. Send. It would need, in this case, it needs to be confirmed by 2 people and then executed. Someone pay for the transaction. I think this is like 2 out of 3, maybe 2 out of 4. In any event, this is how you actually move funds. But obviously, you can't have 1 million people signing transactions. It'd be incredibly inefficient. So what do you do? And the answer is like not obviously anything. This still needs to be worked out. Like people use Discord for forum for discussions. They use Snapshot and Tally for the voting. They use Notice Save to move funds. And the problem with this is it's not an autonomous process. It's not, it does, like there are gaps here. Like why launching a Snapshot vote, okay, is decentralized, but like someone has to do it. And it's not automatically generated based on forums happening and discussions happening. Only a certain number of people can table transactions and Notice Save. Like, how do you vote people into Notice Save? How do you compel a result? Like, all of these are points of potential error that need to be thought about, and one should know this. But this is what most DAOs use: Snapshot, Notice Save, and something like Discord for discussion. And kind of what you've got here is that the DAO itself can just be a smart contract with has money in it, and you vote to move this money and do stuff. And everything else is kind of conceptual, which is fine, and kind of, but this is what a DAO kind of can boil down to, if we really want to boil it down, which is good. It's simple, maybe bad, which is like, well, isn't there more there in terms of platform resources? But you do need some way of managing the membership of this community. Now, you can just have an actively traded token. And for the big protocols like Aave, where the token itself is also used as part of the protocol, I can see why this is a thing. But you might also want to have a token that is not like that valuable. It's hard to trade, it's hard to transfer, that just gives you access. And there's, by the way, something really cool called Collabland, which is Discord and Telegram group access based on what tokens you hold. So linking it to your digital identity. So that's super duper cool. We like that. But you need some way of managing membership, and there are more kind of solutions that have emerged, things like DAO House, things like Aragon, or people just make their own ultimately. Ways to do it, because it's not too hard. It's basically, let's put a token on some mechanism for voting on getting membership. Solvable problems. Obviously, an easy way to manage membership is just issue a token for that, and you then make a decision whether you want it to be publicly traded or not. This is the route BitDAO went, which is like, I think, a very, probably the best route, is you have a token that represents the ability to participate in this ecosystem. Why is that happening? I've lost my thread now. So nice. That token is used to represent interests to govern the protocol. This is nice. But a lot of this is kind of unsolved with DAOs, and that is an opportunity. And DAOs are very much like the in thing at the moment. But like some thought needs to be put to how we structure this. And again, BitDAO is a working, living example, and you can go and do great things. You can go and contribute to the BitDAO ecosystem right now. But what about legal status? Like, this is hard. Is it an LLP? Is it a partnership? Well, no, because there's lots and lots of partners. It's not this simple kind of, any of you know, an LLP structure, or just a partnership, a limited liability partnership, is where the members govern something to some end, and people pay tax if there is tax in their respective jurisdictions, but it's not a company. It's just a group of individuals doing stuff together. And it doesn't seem to be that, because like there's potentially thousands of people in a DAO. Is it a company? Well, it's not really, because companies aren't protocols. They aren't open source. They aren't decentralized. They aren't permissionless. They don't necessarily have a profit motive. They're done for the benefit of whatever purpose they have chosen, usually a technological purpose. So I don't think they're companies, but they are the closest thing to a crypto company. is it a charity? Certainly not. You can have examples that have social or charitable causes, but it's fundamentally has incentives built in for participation. And I don't think it's purely to be a charity. Neither is being a charity. It doesn't kind of give us so much in terms of what the organization actually looks like. Is it an unincorporated entity? And we're beginning to get into what it is. Like, is it like just an entity that is a collection of members? Yes, but it controls a lot of money. So like we've already got a thing that we have to unpack. Is it just a state of mind? And again, I think we're getting closer here that it's like it's a new thing. It's like different. It's like the community running stuff together. And I don't think our current legal structures necessarily reflect this. Maybe there's a reason for that. But yeah. And so it's usually either a community with some ambitions to do something or a ton of money towards some purpose. And I think you need a different structure in each case. A community with ambitions to do something is just an unincorporated entity, a society, a club, which can later become something else. But I think this is a simple one to solve. This can just be a smart contract. A ton of money towards some purpose, and we start getting into like things of like, okay, now we need to think how this actually looks because we want to engage with the fiat system as well. Or maybe we don't. Maybe the whole point of DAOs is to be a company of just the crypto ecosystem. And decentralized ownership models clearly have just changed organizational structure, and perhaps laws don't reflect this. And what I've just said here, decentralized ownership models combined with incentives is basically just a crypto protocol. It's a something that is run by a lot of people that has incentives for people to take part. This is kind of crypto economics. And that is a fundamentally different thing about cryptos. You have these entities, these protocols that are very different. Like the equivalent of a Facebook doesn't really exist because the equivalent would be a Facebook run by its users and maintained by its users. And with an organizational structure where they're like, if the token holders got together, they could change the company structure very fast. There's no administrative burden. And again, maybe administrative burden comes up for a reason, but at least in the crypto company, and if a crypto company is seen as a DAO, this is much lighter. The other thing I want to say, and I haven't put it here, is I think there is a potential for DAOs to be completely code-based. And by this, I mean they are smart contracts. Governance is like a DApp. You engage with it through your wallet, your address, and all the tooling to run it is itself also a protocol, and this will change the world. And I think this often kind of makes sense, but like there's a lot of leaps to go. And in that context, like I can see how DAOs would work, and also how like the simple premise that, okay, why don't we take a lot of the stuff that a company does and try and automate it, which I guess is the autonomous bit with code. Could this do great things? And like maybe it could. Like I think this is it's a good argument. And certainly for investment DAOs and investment funds, this is clearly the case. Like this seems a very innovative way to like move money fast. Anyone that's ever used Gnosis Safe, like it's a fun experience. It's like, I get it. Like we can like together, like in the same way it's fun to move money in crypto because it's fast and it's very engaging and you feel a very deep kind of relationship to it because you can see it moving, it happens quickly, it feels quite gamified. In just the same way that you have that feeling, you get this kind of feeling with Gnosis Safe as well. It's like, oh, this was so simple to move money together. It was like 2 clicks. In a way that if you were doing that, I don't know, if a group of friends of you got together to like have a fun together and move money, it'd have to be in someone's bank account, which has tax issues, and you'd have to report it, and like you'd have all this complexity that you can kind of abstract away. With something like Gnosis Safe. But we should be aware of adverse selection and moral hazards, because if we're saying a DAO is, okay, it's a community that's managed with some on-chain governance, and maybe it has a smart contract to move funds, and maybe it has a token to kind of help with membership. We have to be aware of these two kind of, like I'm using phrases here, game theory phrases, adverse selection and moral hazards. Adverse selection is like bad outcomes, broadly both of them describe bad outcomes happening because of incentives that that benefit one person over another and not the community as a whole. With crypto, what we kind of want to do is it be in everyone's interest to work towards the benefits of the whole, because the outcome which benefits me most is also the outcome that benefits the community and the protocol itself the most. But sometimes this goes wrong. So there's obviously an incentive for people to pump the token price of something for their own gain, for instance, because they have adverse selection, they have differing information, and this leads to moral hazards, which are basically things going wrong. So this has to be bear in mind, and I think there's always should have a natural skepticism towards anything with a token. But just because, again, if the token suddenly takes on a value that is not linked to being involved in the community itself, then this changes the incentives and the purpose one would have for being in that community in the first place. And this always goes to a famous game theoretical experiment, which is the market for lemons, which is it's very hard to shop for second-hand cars because the person selling the second-hand car knows if it's bad, and the person buying doesn't really have any idea if it's bad or the history it had before buying. And because of this asymmetric information, there doesn't really become a market for like second-hand cars. They didn't used to be until information was kind of more better available. But this just arises because of uncertainty. So where does this all go from here? Well, look, the existence of BitDAO is a demonstration that this can work. Like, this program is funded by BitDAO. Like, it's run by the token. It has a huge treasury of that's a lot of money. That's 2.7 billion. So where does this go? Well, it kind of depends on legals. Like, is the structure going to be allowed? What does this legal structure look like? But then, like, so does crypto broadly. But crypto is fully going down this route in general, and in terms of using DAOs for everything. I think we can kind of like, this is good, like DAOs are gonna be a thing. And I think the good thing about crypto is it's kind of a force of nature. Sometimes it wills itself into existence, and like people want DAOs to work, and people are setting up DAOs. So like because DAOs don't really have a set definition at the moment, I think what might end up just happening here is like one will find a organizational structure that kind of is decentralized, is kind of autonomous, and works. And that might not be exactly what we understand a DAO to be now, but yeah, it wills itself into existence. Crypto does this all the time, partly based on the amount of money being involved. Then, yeah, I've already said that, even if we're started up. But it is all just about community here. And I think if you've got community, you can do a lot of good things. And if you can figure problems out. And I think the good thing about DAOs is the good thing about DAOs is this is baked in, and people only set them up because they want to achieve a certain goal, and that's a good thing. But what about innovation? So like, obviously there's legal innovation here. I don't think there's a company structure that fits nicely, and like maybe this is not for you and I to sort out, but like either DAOs aren't going to work, they'll fit into a bucket that already exists, or there is a new bucket. That's kind of exciting. It's regulatory as well. Like, how are they going to be treated? Like, are they going to be left alone? Are they going to be regulated? Are investment DAOs, like, is that the hard thing? But like a DAO around, like, I don't know, a social group is fine. Who knows? Tooling is the obvious one. Like I showed you, Snapshot is fine, Gnosis Safe is fine. Like at the very least, if you think these are the best things in the sliced bread, they're not integrated with each other very well. So please, we're probably going to do a DAO hackathon next year, early next year. Please, someone build a like DAO tooling. Please. You'll make so much money. And obviously in the same things, like a simple platform that you can go that works, that allows you to spin up a DAO very fast without knowing anything technical. Like this doesn't really exist. DAO tries to get there, but I really think this platform needs to exist, and we'd love to see it in future events and hackathons. And then there's kind of new forms of community building. It's like, this is a different way of this is a different way of doing a community. It's like, yeah, it's far more upstart. It's like a startup mentality to community. So I think we're already seeing, and anyone who follows the Cooper Troopers and the Peter Pans already see their approach to community building. I think we'll see new forms of this emerge. And I don't really know what these will be, but it'll be different. And we'll see new purposes. Like maybe, like I see Hampton here has talked about the political aspect. Maybe DAOs be used. I've got a reason I think they won't be, but maybe they'll be used for that. Like maybe they're just going to use to manage crypto protocols. Maybe there are use cases. Maybe charities become DAOs. It just becomes a really efficient way to very transparency see like movements of funds and how much people have stuff. And this is a fundamentally good thing. And then we go back to BitDAO. So it's the world's largest I'm calling it investment DAO, but it's DAO towards the purpose of growing the community in general, the crypto community. And we've seen kind of broadly here what it does, but you can also see by the very nature of this program the great work it can do, not blowing our own trumpet, but also kind of supporting education and things growing, etc. I will end by saying what I said here is if you take away one thing, it's just about community. And that like, if you have a fervent community towards something, like if you take the principles of crypto and decentralization and this being a good thing and incentives being aligned, we can start having different ways to build organizations. Again, this may work. This may just be like a fad. This may be like a terrible idea. Or it may be like, yeah, that really makes sense for a set of use cases. Certainly, what you cannot underestimate is how popular DAOs have been, and particularly are now. And I think this goes to show that there is a desire for a different type of structure. So thank you very much in general. I'm going to now take questions, starting with Hampton's, which was, can DAOs eventually replace aspects or even full forms of government? And I think no, honestly, because yeah, I feel like, so I have a general point, which is that if you look at how systems change, this is me going full political, see how systems change over hundreds of years. It usually happens because there is an existential threat to the predominant power, like a monarch or a dictator, and they set up like forms of power sharing or governance of power to maintain power in the first instance, and not for any like other good. Like it's just to maintain power. And you see like over time, you see the movement from, I know this is like so like esoteric now, you see the movement from dictatorships to monarchies, to democracies, to majoritarian government, to first past the post type systems like in the UK, where if you get 30% of the vote, you're effectively the ruling party and have complete power, to power sharing. And I see that it was the same with crypto, like for crypto being adopted and for it to like crypto to be like the financial system or like be them like how government is done in general. I don't know. I don't see that like crypto is making this like knocking on the door why this would be the case really at the moment. I think a lot of things would have to happen for a government to be a DAO. But like it's the same governance problem. And I don't think governance works well anywhere in the world. Everyone complains about their government. So like, I don't know. I don't really see a DAO being I don't really see that yet. I think you also have a big issue right now, like on a very simple level, that for people to engage with crypto, they need to know how a wallet works and self-custody and like a ton of concepts. And like people don't know this. This is still like a very new thing. And there probably should be abstractions and far easier ways of doing it. And then you've got the issue that like going in and out of fiat from crypto is still very expensive, highly regulated, and inefficient. So like government's kind of like fiat. Yeah. Are DAO tokens just ERC20 tokens? You said some are not. So you can have tokens that just aren't traded. You can just make sure there's no market for them, or I think you have non-transferable tokens. I'm sure you can have non-transferable tokens. So that's way you could have membership being an NFT that is unique to you and unique to your person. And again, it can be traded, but it's like not like a token where you can accumulate lots of them. If you could say that if anyone has more than one NFT, like they don't have access. But yeah, broadly it's ERC20. 22 hackathons, there's none of them announced yet, but they will soon. And they'll be on encode.club. Oh, there's a hands up question from Imi. Do you want to ask?
Hi, yes, I just have a comment. First of all, thank you for this talk, very interesting. And I just wanted to add, some months ago, I saw some news that Wyoming, the state in the US, they announced legislation to regulate DAOs. So we should be expecting that a DAO can have legal status when registered in Wyoming. I think it's not fact yet. They're working on the legislation, but that's something to look forward to. Perhaps the first regulatory proposal in the world for DAOs. So
I actually know a lot about this. So the structure of it is not a like new legal structure. It's an LLC, like a company. It's basically saying DAOs can be companies. And I don't think that's controversial, but you have big issues around like then who are the owners and who is liable, and like how you go from crypto to fiat. And actually, if you look at the Constitution DAO thing, so this is again the DAO that tried to buy a physical copy of the US Constitution. The process for that was this: people contributed to an address or a multi-sig. That multi-sig then sent money to individuals who then deposited that money in a company that then transferred into fiat, deposited that money, and then used that to physically and fiat buy the stuff on Sotheby's. I think maybe they bought it in crypto. That bit I'm hazy on, but it was like people had to do it and set up a company. And as soon as you have a company, you need human beings. And like then you've got massive doxing issues and massive centralization issues. So this is what I kind of stayed away from, like that side of legal status, because actually a lot of DAOs are partnerships. So I think Metacartel Ventures, which is the investment one, is a partnership. And some are like what's it called? Not unincorporated entities, foundations offshore, which are kind of like don't really have people responsible for them, but like have some trustee type things, kind of look like a charity. And like, I don't know, I just see there's another fundamental issue. And again, I don't want to deal with issues because I think this is a cool structure. It's very crypto native. I don't think you want to think about company structure because it's going to go wrong. But like, if you don't domicile something in the real world, like you need people attached to it. Like you can't just have addresses, and that will never be. That's incompatible with the values of crypto right now. And I think the whole point of DAOs is they are decentralized, they are permissionless, they are censorship resistant, all the things of crypto. And therefore, I think if you end up having to be incorporated something somewhere, you're in trouble. But then you've got a trouble of how you engage with the real world system. So this is to be solved. Like I don't think this is simple. Yeah. Cool. So there's not really, I didn't really mention protocols. So you can actually build DAO anywhere. Like there's not, from what I've said, there's nothing DAO-y about like, it's a smart contract to manage funds, maybe. It's a token to manage membership, maybe. And it's a governance mechanism, maybe. And all of that could be on any chain. It's mainly on Ethereum. Like the stuff I showed you now is Ethereum. This could be on Solana, this could be on Avalanche, this could be on Polkadot. It's more sophisticated than Ethereum. Typically when we say DAO, we mean Ethereum. Cool. Any other questions? Perfect. Well, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to drop my email if anyone wants to ask me the direct questions. It's been an absolute pleasure. I like to talk about DAOs. We haven't announced the next stage of programming, but there's many, many, many things coming. And we look forward to discussing with you. But in the meantime, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much for BitDAO for supporting this event and this program. And I will, if anyone would like to contribute to the BitDAO, that's very nice. So I'm going to actually share my screen quickly before we go. Actually, I'm going to put it, you can, if you want to contribute to BitDAO, I assume this is an official link. So yeah, do have a look at all things BitDAO. All right, guys, thank you very much. Have a good evening. We'll see you all morning or afternoon, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you very much.